Yes, good afternoon once again to one and all. Towards the topic balancing cost and benefits, financial strategy for Olympic ambitions, a look at economic modeling, budgets, and long term analysis. So, we have with us today an expert, Dr. Dipesh Shah, Executive Director, International Financial Services Centers Authority. Dr. Dipesh Shah has over 23 years of professional experience in international business, project development, corporate affairs, corporate law, and policy matters. His most prominent achievement includes setting up and operationalizing India's first smart city and international financial services center. Today, Dr. Shah is going to present on a topic International Financial Services Center at GIFT City. I request Dr. Shah to please start his session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope I am audible to all of you.
It could have been a little louder.
I hope you are able to hear me clearly.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much. At the outset, I thank the RRU for having this session on the video conferencing for the financing through the International Financial Services Center. Just for the benefit of everyone, I'm just putting on the video of the GIFT, International Financial Services Center, which gives you a better perspective of what is happening there, and then we can probably take up the overall development of the financial sector, including the technology and the financing activities happening from the IFFC zone. With this, allow me to share my video. It's great. I'll put up the video.
Dr. Dipesh Shah, am I audible to you?
Leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister, the country is spearheading a path-breaking initiative of developing its very own International Financial Services Center. In today's globalized world, international financial centers play a pivotal role in facilitating cross-border financial flows and transactions. To unleash the true potential of India, emerging as international financial services powerhouse, the Government of India in the year 2015 operationalized country's first International Financial Services Center in GIFT City, Gujarat. To facilitate foreign currency transactions, the IFSC has been designated as a non-resident zone under Foreign Exchange Management Regulations. This unique carve-out makes GIFT IFSC as a zone which is distinct from domestic Indian economy. The country's maiden IFSC is being developed as a leading international financial center with globally benchmarked regulations, competitive tax regime, and ease of doing business. To benchmark the IFSC with global financial centers, the Government of India in 2019 took a path-breaking step by establishing the International Financial Services Centers Authority, IFSCA. The IFSCA has been established as a unified statutory authority to develop and regulate financial institutions, financial products, and financial services within IFSCs in India. With IFSCA assuming its statutory mandate from October 2020, the country's maiden IFSC has witnessed sustained growth and is emerging as a preferred jurisdiction for availing full spectrum of international financial services. The banking sector, which acts as the lifeblood for any financial center, is witnessing sustained growth. With market infrastructure institutions firmly establishing presence, the capital market ecosystem is witnessing accelerated growth. India, a land having a cultural affinity towards gold since time immemorial, has been a major global consumer of precious metal. Now, with a vision to transform the bullion market ecosystem and enable India to emerge as a global price influencer, the first international bullion exchange, IIBX, has been operationalized in GIFT IFSC. The rapidly growing fund management business is playing a pivotal role in onshoring the offshore financial services. With regulatory ease and competitive tax advantage, IFSC is emerging as a preferred destination for pooling of global capital for investments into India. With new set of IFSCA insurance regulations in place, GIFT IFSC is well poised to emerge as a hub for reinsurance and retail insurance for Indian diaspora. India, being the third largest domestic aviation market in the world, is now taking lead in developing aircraft leasing and financing ecosystem in GIFT IFSC. India has emerged as a global fintech leader with more than 40% share in real-time digital payments in the year 2021. Now, to fuel the next phase of fintech growth, GIFT IFSC is being developed as a global fintech hub. Capitalizing on the availability of highly skilled human resource and low cost of operations, GIFT IFSC is now emerging as a major hub for global in-house operations. India's strong commitment and resolve to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals as well as the target of net zero carbon emissions by 2070 has paved the way for GIFT IFSC to emerge as a dominant gateway for channelizing global capital flows into India for green and sustainable projects. To support the development of vibrant financial market, an entire ecosystem of professional service providers is also being promoted. In its relentless pursuits to develop GIFT IFSC as a leading international financial center, IFSCA is implementing several new projects. IFSC has truly emerged as a center where finance meets technology, talent meets innovation, entrepreneur meets success, and business meets expansion. The future of international finance is in GIFT IFSC.
So, hope this could have given you a broad idea about what the International Financial Services Center is doing. In terms of the overall financing ecosystem, there are banks and funds which are already set up into the financial center and are already having several line of businesses, including undertaking the financing for several projects in India. And we have also seen a sports fund also launched from the IFFC ecosystem. So we have a sports company which have created a alternate investment fund into the financial center, and they are able to then invest into the companies into this area. I hope my PowerPoint presentation is visible to the audience, and based on that, I am just running few slides.
sir, it's not visible, sir. So if you can read.
Okay. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
I hope it is visible now.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So as I was just trying to explain that this now provides a great opportunity for financing into the Indian ecosystem, and there are several businesses which have been unfolded into the GIFT City. GIFT City is actually 1.5 hour from the location where you are, 45 minutes to 1 hour, and it is developed near the India's the Gujarat's domestic and international airport at Ahmedabad, and very close to that, in 20 minutes from that. And this zone has two uh, uh, zone, where one is the domestic and the other is the international financial services center. And what IFFC now provides is that it's an offshore center within onshore, which means that the financing all in dollar or in foreign currency is possible from the GIFT City into India and also into the overseas. So a lot of institutions take in India a dollar funding from GIFT City bank branches. In fact, we have 28 bank branches now operating from the IFFC zone. So external commercial borrowing, trade finance, and all financing facilities have enabled in large scale in from GIFT into India, and particularly for the financing ecosystem of sports and others. I think the IFFC can provide a few options to this sector when you are considering the funding requirements. Also, from a perspective of the unique features, this is India's first global financial center. So outside of India, outside of the domestic zone, but having an offshore status under the FEMA. Under foreign exchange law, the zone is declared as a non-resident. There are no capital account controls, as normally India has controls on the capital. Here, very competitive tax regime has been provided by the government. Out of 15 years, 10 years there is no tax on the business profits that the entity earns for the dollar business that they do with India or outside. So these are all for undertaking international transactions. The tax incentives have been offered from the IFFC zone. Currently, as you can see on the screen, banks, stock exchanges, funds, insurance, they all are operating from the IFFC zone, and one can actually uh, combine their requirements into several financial services from the IFFC zone. We also have foreign universities operating from the IFFC zone. We have two Australian university which operates even the cyber security and related courses from the IFFC zone. And then there are several professional service providers, including the aircraft leasing and ship leasing activities happening from the IFFC zone. We are a separate unified regulator, which means that we combine the powers of RBI, SEBI, IRDA, and PFRDA all in one. So you have one single unified regulators for the IFFC zone, created by the Act of Parliament by the Government of India. And currently, as you can see, we are almost 725 plus firms, almost $87 billion of transactions happening on the international exchange, more than 70 plus billion dollar of banking asset size now within the IFFC ecosystem, and large number of funds and fund management entities are operating from the IFFC zone, including, as I said, they run few sports funds from the IFFC zone. In terms of some of the leading players, we have in banks, in funds, even the sovereign wealth fund like Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, they all have set up their fund structures in the IFFC to invest into Indian companies and outside from the GIFT. And we have several large players like Bank of America, and even in the domestic zone, the IBM and Google, they operate their software and the back-end operations from the GIFT City. With this, as I said, there are quite a few tax incentives offered. We are also developing this as a fintech and techfin hub. platform to understand as to what the IFFC provides in terms of the opportunity. So you have direct, fintechs in several categories. You also have a sizable number of foreign fintech firms now registered into the international zone in GIFT City. In fact, 17 firms from global markets have registered with us from outside India. We have become more like a lending pad for the foreign fintech firms that you can actually set up in the IFFC zone and undertake dollar transactions with India much more efficiently. So this is becoming a very important gateway for several players. We already have some of the TechFin firms like Wipro, Infosys, and even recently Cognizant we have licensed, and we have several TechFin firms and data center all operating from the IFFC zone. I'll stop here and probably open it up for Q&A or the questions that the participants may have. Would be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dipesh, for your insights to the GIFT City Financial Services. Any question? The floor is open for everyone for a question answer session. Post the question answer sessions, we will be having a panel discussions. So I request Dr. Dipesh, please be online and we'll be having the panel discussions.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. And if any participants wants to visit GIFT City, they are most welcome to see for yourself as to what all facilities have been offered from the international zone in GIFT City. Thank you.
Now I would like to request IT team to please connect Mr. Udit Sheth. Mr. Udit Sheth. We will be having a virtual panel discussion and will be moderating by Mr. Ravneet Gill, CEO AISTS India.
I can see the audience.
Okay, perfect. So I'll hand over the session to Mr. Ravneet Gill. Please, sir.
Good afternoon, Udit. How are you?
Hi, Ravneet. First of all, I want to apologize to our and not being able to be was called for meeting, which I had to travel out. So thank you for accommodating me on this session on the thing. As you see, I'm taking this meeting from my car, and that's the I guess the joy of the less of joy of taking meetings for sports industry on the go all the time.
No, that's fine. So, your voice was breaking, so I hope that the connection remains stable. So, just to be able to provide some context, Udit is an entrepreneur in the automotive industry. He's also somebody who plays a very significant role in sport. So, if you're familiar with Ahmedabad, you have Transtadia there, which is very much his creation. And Udit is also the president of Yogasana Bharat, which is, as you know, recently recognized as a competitive sport. Will be a demonstration sport in the next Asian Games and then become a competitive sport. And obviously, it's something that India is really rooting for. So for those of you who are not familiar with Yogasana, Yogasana is the physical practice of yoga. And, if you see some of the asanas which are part of that, they're no less than gymnastics, require the kind of flexibility, strength, core strength, which any other competitive sport really needs. What we are going to be discussing today is really the financing of large international sporting events. And the reason this is relevant is that if there'll be people who will say that if India is looking to host the Olympics, is that money better spent, let's say, in primary healthcare, in education, sanitation, city planning, cleaning up our cities given where AQIs, etc. are? And then what is the case to be made in that case with respect to being able to host the Olympics, which typically are a $6-8 billion check which you need to come out. So with that background, Udit, let me ask you, as somebody who heads the National Sports Federation, has been in the industry for a very long time, how do you see the case for India hosting 2036. Shall we just make this an interactive session that the audiences here could become part of this? Udit is back, I think. You are barely, Udit. Little bit of the breaking up of your voice.
To find a spot where it may be a little better from my side, but my network is full. Maybe it's something between the Wi-Fi and the connectivity overall.
We can hear you now.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. So I heard your question about the India's bid for the Olympics and what I feel about it. I think it's actually a beautiful vision to have as a country which is developing so fast. And I think we are not about hosting an Olympics is not about building infrastructure and conducting the games. In my opinion, the Olympic vision that the Honorable Prime Minister and the Home Minister and the entire government under them is looking at revitalizing the brand India. It's about marketing India, repackaging India, to showing that we have come to the forefront not only in terms of infrastructure and development, but sport is a confluence of health, finance, infrastructure, tourism, culture, high performance, sponsorships, marketing, education. So sports drives that vision for the Olympic program. And I think that we have 10 years to prepare for that program. It is very clear for me that through the vision of the Olympics, we will look at developing so many different stratas of society, and so many pillars of development will be in place. So I think it's a great vision, it's a grand vision, and I think that, of course, as a president of Yogasana Bharat, I want to see the National Federation sport being part of the Olympics. I think that 50% of medals for India will come from my sport, and that's the way I'm looking at it. But at the same time, I'm also looking at it as a great opportunity for India to have a good podium strategy as a top 10 nation in the Olympic movement. So I think overall, it's a great, I would say, vision and also a bid. And I think we must work on it and try for getting not only the Olympics, but many other mega events going towards the Olympics.
I think that's been, very appropriately put, that, it's very difficult to look at the Olympics only from the lens of sport and sporting excellence. It actually adds to the overall quality of life of the nation, of the cities which will eventually end up hosting the Olympics. The investment that goes in helps in transportation, logistics, city planning, infrastructure, which makes day-to-day life much easier for the citizens. Udit also talked about looking at it in the context of health. So one of my favorite refrains is that if you look at India, which is the largest young nation in the world, it is also the global capital for a lot of the diseases. You look at strokes, hypertension, diabetes, and many of these incidentally are sedentary lifestyle related. So to be able to build that awareness, build that sports culture, get India moving. So India as a nation is on the move, but Indians as a people are not on the move. And the question really is that how do we get them moving as well? And to that extent, specifically in the context of India, the Olympics will have a much deeper role in terms of also recreating and redefining our cultural identity. So tell me, Udit, if you had to think in terms of funding an Olympic, and by the time it comes to 2036, we will be talking about double-digit $1 billion. I think the simplest way to do it is to be able to dip into the government coffers and fund it out of that. But what would your thoughts be with regard to how do we diversify the sources of funding, which makes the games more dynamic, brings in more vitality, brings in better financial returns, and obviously lessens the burden on the exchequer?
So I would actually go back to the root over here. I don't think that the Olympics is a burden on the exchequer at all. Of course, funding from the government is critical, as is a guarantee from the government as well. But there are so many sources of funding these kind of mega events. I mean, for example, the UK uses a tried and tested method of the sports lottery, which allows them to, get in as many as 70 billion pounds into their kitty almost annually, which half of it that goes back into distribution into sports and the rest towards the development of sports. If you look at the London Olympics, I think they spent about $20 billion. I think China, of course, outdid everyone multi-fold over, and we can't compare the Olympic model to China because they have a different economic system altogether. Also, once you talk about putting the Olympics, I think there are so many barters as well as sponsorship opportunities that we can bring together. Of course, the IOC has their sponsor body, but you have also the opportunity for also local sponsorship. So, for example, just a small example, at this, when the Olympics happen, we have a lot of vehicular movement. We have buses, we have cars for the VIPs and the office bearers and the contingents and so on. So, for example, one of our Indian companies who are now global manufacturers of these vehicles will sponsor them, and back they sell it to the market after that. So they get the branding over there, plus they can back to back sell it. And that's what, for example, BMW and Hyundai has done in the past. Also, some of the Olympic Games, some of the infrastructure that is built is modular. So you can actually pack it up because you don't need all that infrastructure after the Games. So you can pack it up and you can rebuild it to the future Olympics as well. So that is a way to also cut, some of the costs or recover some of that cost. So, and then of course the tourism inflow. So that's why I said that Olympics is not about just building stadiums and conducting the games. It's about the rebranding India. And the minute the rebranding of India starts happening on the vision, then a lot of tourism influx will come in. Today, India is a hub of great spiritual tourism, historic tourism, but other tourism can also pick up for sports, entertainment, our beaches, our entire environment. So I think funding is quite vast and is available if we put our thoughts in a structured manner.
You're a very good example of PPP, having built Transtadia in Ahmedabad. Obviously, other facilities coming up in other cities as well. How do you think? I mean, there are certain ways where, let's say that the private sector comes in through CSR, through infrastructure building and all of that. But do you think it also gives India the opportunity, given your own personal experience, it gives India the opportunity to fund the Olympics through a very dynamic, very modern, forward-looking PPP model?
I think public-private partnership is tried and tested in most of the countries in the world. And I think it's the word partnership is very key. I think the public and the private have to work hand in hand. I think annuity model can be one way to fund it. So, for example, the private player puts in the money and then it's recovered over a period of time with the interest cost. It's like an EMI that you subscribe. That would be one way of funding it. The other way is a VGF model. And the VGF model also allows us to put in the gap funding from the government, but also we can recover the equity that we have put in. The third place is a real estate play. So, for example, I'll give you an example of how stadiums are built. If you can buy a piece of land which also takes care of the stadium land, then the time of construction between the time you had the land to the time of commercial operation, the land value goes up by anything from 2.5 to 3x, which is a massive real estate play for the developer. Another way to do it is, the retail rentals. The retail rentals go up by 4x from the time you construct to the time you go into commercial operation. So those very dynamic ways of bringing different players into it is important. And then finally, PPP also needs legacy. So you can't just build it for the games. You have to have a legacy plan that how it will be utilized after the games. So, for example, can be part of the university ecosystem? Can it be part of the hospitality ecosystem, or both? So in Transtadia we have a clubhouse, we have an upcoming hotel, we have Transtadia University, we have commercial, and the same model that we have in Ahmedabad, we have now hyper, turbocharged it for Nagpur. So we have from day one a very thought out commercial plan, but sports also starts growing. So sports from a rental perspective will not fund the infrastructure, but you need to have all these places of commercial, retail, hospitality, education to actually augment that as a part of the legacy plan. So these are some ideas and some thoughts on how PPP can work and take the Olympic movement forward, and also the other infrastructure. We have about 300 stadiums in India, 300 plus stadiums in India in the center of the cities. Those stadiums were allocated land of 30 to 100 acres when it was considered outside the city at that time, maybe 20, 30 years ago. Now they've become part of the city. That's very valuable, but their utilization is only 1% per annum today. So these are the new models that the Honorable Prime Minister and the Cabinet have discovered, that the national monetization pipeline for these infrastructure can be also privatized in a PPP model.
Also, I think if you look at it from the point of view of just CSR, one of the things, of course, the government did with regard to the Companies Act was to say that 2% of the profits need to go into CSR. Does it make sense that within that CSR 2% allocation, that you carve out a certain percentage specifically for sport? Because if you see the total amount of CSR that corporate India contributes vis-a-vis how much of it goes into sport, it's minuscule. So does it make sense to then put in a provision, a subcategory which is mandatory, which is for sport within CSR?
I think that it works both ways, Ravneet. I think that CSR can't be mandated. I think every corporate has a vision, and the people who are actually wanting CSR should be able to be responsibly claiming what they want to achieve out of that CSR. And I think sport is a very right way to do it. I think the industry body of sports, Sportscom, which is the NASCOM of sports, is also working closely with the ministry to ensure that a percentage of the CSR budget also comes. But we need to be able to utilize it. We need to be able to show that we are being responsible in the way that this industry is implementing that money in the right way and giving that return to the fund as well.
No, I think the question I really had was not just make a generic allocation to sport, but towards funding the Olympics, for instance. Does it make sense to have a percentage carved out which goes towards funding the Olympics? And to that extent, you can have a much larger outlay and have games which are of a much grander scale as well.
I think that the idea is immensely, I would say, practical. I think that corporates coming in and putting their money into the CSR bucket makes enormous amount of sense. I think you talk about the top 500 listed entities itself, then we have a massive corpus that can be funded right through the CSR budget. But I think while they do that, they should declare sports as a sunrise industry as well, so that more and more people who invest in sports have bigger kickbacks and better, I would say, sweetening of their taxes, etc., for maybe a period of 10 years. And that can also add to the CSR. So I'm saying that sports can be a sunrise industry, and also the CSR can be very enormously beneficial as well.
I would now, put a question to the floor itself. Does anybody have suggestions with respect to what could be other incremental sources of funding for the Olympics should India get the bid for 2036? Any suggestions?
Mr. Gill, hi Mr. Gill, and hi Udit sir. I do not have a suggestion, obviously, but I do want to understand that many of the countries, because considering the economic impact which a nation has to go through while organizing an Olympic Games or mega event of that sort, uh, at times we have seen that they go for a feasibility study. Okay, let's commit a feasibility study first, and then maybe we can find out a model which fits to case basis and depends upon the city or maybe the country. How about, because this is high time, we are talking about economics in Olympics and everything which associates with Olympics. How about having a feasibility study, and who is the most appropriate entity to make this thing happen so that we talks on practical terms? So this will be my extension.
I think that's a difficult one to unpeel, Utsav, frankly speaking, because when you talk about a feasibility study, you're always looking at economic return, right? But the returns that Olympics generate are many of those are actually not economic or definitely cannot be quantified. So you will always find a deficit over there. I think the bigger issue that we are trying to address right now is that if you saw what happened in, let's say, Brazil, what happened in the case of the Olympics, or Commonwealth Games in the case of Edinburgh, you saw South Africa and Australia say that they don't want to do the Commonwealth Games. I think there's a lot of also citizens who say that this money could have been better spent. Specifically, countries which have reached a certain level in sport don't feel that they need to put in more money into that. For a country like India, there could always, and we'll always have very divergent views in this nation, and that's measure of our democracy. People have views that this money should not go to the Olympics; it should go elsewhere. So what we are trying to say is that we don't economize on the scale of the Olympics. We don't just do the bare minimum. We have a Grand Olympics. It becomes a very participative thing for the entire country. But at the same time, let the private sector come forward and other sources come forward in terms of shouldering the responsibility of funding the Olympics. And eventually, it may be the government that cuts out that entire check, and it's not such a huge amount for a country of India's size. But are there ways and means where we can come up with something novel, which hasn't been done so far in the Olympic movement, which could go towards providing cushioning with regard to the government funding? I always think about, sometime back there was a press report that the Saudis offered $5 billion for a stake in IPL, right? And effectively that valued IPL at $30 billion. If BCCI, and again, this was a purely speculative report, I'm just giving it because of the numbers, that if suppose BCCI did decide to do that, dilute 17% at $5 billion, I mean, that could take care of a very large, part of the budget for the Olympics. I mean, everybody says that cricket is the presiding deity when it comes to sport in this country. And maybe it is also, cricket's responsibility then to be able to repay that, what the love that they get, the adulation that they get, the commercial monetization that happens of the sport in this country, that could then they also come in. Like I said, that report would have been purely speculative. But the whole intention of this particular session is not so much in terms of determining whether it's viable or not. I think that viability on multiple fronts in terms of development, infrastructure, quality of life, health, pays off. There's no question about that. We're just trying to make that entire dialogue smoother and not come up with any negative friction effectively.
So just to add on, it's not a negative addition, but I would say most of the nations, and the data speaks for it, most of the nations which invited Olympics with a good faith that they will definitely boost the economics. Let's keep aside the urban regeneration, because that is the only output which many of the countries have yielded after hosting Olympics. But when it comes to having Olympics in terms of economic benefits, miserably we have seen that there was miserably countries failed. So in that case, we need to have a very, very robust backing of an understanding of economic implications, that anytime if India hosts an Olympic, it is not going to be for the economic sake or to boost up the economy. That's not going to happen for the worst case scenario. And that is why
I think, Ravneet and the team, which is the audience that is there, one of the key things is that we can't, cut it into a very generic discussion, because Olympics, when it was given to different countries over a period of time, if you see most of these countries, their GDP was different, their population count was different. India is totally a different animal as a country altogether. We have so many people, the spending power is so much. Um, Greece actually went into economic turmoil because of the Olympics. But if you look at what the what Korea did with the Olympics, it was a massive success for them. If you look at Britain, it was very successful for them, and in fact, they I think walked away with a profit on it. So it depends on how you skin the cat in terms of modeling it. But more than that, I think looking at a cash return as well as a softer return, which is immeasurable, is something that we need to do. And I think that while we be stuck on this point of hosting the Olympics, I think what we need to do as a nation, and this is where it comes from the bottom of my heart always, is that we should always prepare that we are going to host the Olympics. Whether we get the bid or not, it doesn't matter to me. I think we need to put all the things on the back of a vision of Olympics and really put India on a very rapid development program, as the Honorable Prime Minister and the Viksit Bharat program is out actually doing for us. And I think the feasibility studies, etc., will happen from an infrastructure point of view, from an Olympic point of view, but you can't measure, in my opinion. For example, if we say that we want to do the Olympics not in one location, but spread it in 10 cities, like the FIFA World Cup, for example, the entire game changes. Okay, it doesn't. If we say that we want to not do it in Ahmedabad, but we want to do it in Bangalore because the climatic condition is different, the entire thing changes. So I think it becomes a matter of how we want to plan it, what we want to do, and what are we going to do, because sports is a melting pot. We have to change the way we do our tourism, or make it much more attractive, because India has the capability to be a Switzerland also, a Bali also. It can be Kenya also, in terms of so we have to now start repackaging India on the back of that movement. And I think the dividends can be much more than a few medals on the podium.
I agree. I think the question that becomes the objective and the aspiration for India. There's no getting away from that. Uh, all things aside, I think the fundamental truth is that all the big great nations in the world, India is the only one which is not a sporting superpower. So it's not as if we are one of the three, one of the four. We are the only one which is a big great nation, and we are not a sporting superpower. That needs to change fundamentally. And I think the whole quest for the Olympics will bring about that mindset change, bring in that level of respect that sport deserves in this country, and the investment. And then to the point that Udit made, that these countries have been at different stages of their life cycles. In many of these cases, the infrastructure already existed, and they probably overbuilt. I think what we really need to do also in many respects is that create that infrastructure from scratch, because that does not exist to begin with, and obviously that investment has a different return vis-a-vis where you tend to overbuild. So I think on that there is complete clarity. Before we close the session, and I thank Udit, any observations, comments, questions from the audience? Please. Could be. Udit, there's a question from the audience. We're just getting a mic across.
Hi, Udit. So this is...
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. So one of my observations says that if we look at the India's stake as a first-time prospectus of hosting an Olympics, so I've had a couple of studies, those who have already hosted and those who never had the opportunity to host it. So we had a socio-economic study on that. Example, 1908, London has hosted very first Olympics. After that, 40 years after that, prior to after the Second World War, they have again hosted in 1948. And finally, 2012, they have hosted finals. So 3 times. So they have undergone sustainability and green economy. And right now, my question, or might be a suggestion, that what would be India's take at 2036 whether we should go for the circular economy perspective, having the sustainability development goals into perspective. What is your take on having the circular economy where we can have all the things into perspective and keep on moving?
So I think to get to the point of the answer, in my opinion, is that any program that we take up, it has to have a sustainable program built in it. I think in terms of technology, in terms of the way that we conduct the games, but also build our future towards that, we need to have a very clear green net zero program around it. And while we do that, I think it's also important to understand, like, for example, there is a massive change today, and Japan is leading the way, Sweden is leading the way in terms of construction emission, construction technology, modular technology. And I think those things can be very quickly adapted to India. But also we need to understand that our nation, the way the flora and fauna of our nation is very different from those countries. So we need to also do it our way. There is no, like, I'm on the body of Sportscom, and we had a recent meeting with the Honorable Minister Shri Mandavya ji, and then back-to-back meetings as a sports federation official. We had a meeting with all the sports federations. And I think the government is very clear that we need to perform on all aspects that will lead to not only performance in terms of getting those medals and doing well as we go ahead, but also the industry has to participate, the economy has to grow, we need to create more employment, we need to create more sustainability, there has to be a legacy plan, and I think that's the only way. We have to have a multi-pronged approach. That is the only approach that will work. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of problems to face after we put in this kind of money towards that vision.
I think another suggestion I would like to have is what we can learn from China. Apparently, 2007 they have had the opportunity, of course, got the bidding for Beijing Olympics 2008. So apparently, that point of time they were following the trends of circular economy, and they were back then 5th largest economy of the world, and right now India is 5th largest economy of the world. And after hosting the Olympics, they have immediately jumped onto the 3rd largest economy, and right now they are the 2nd. So that is something India can definitely work on, ponder upon, that how we would be able to have their kind of circular economy plan into perspective. That would be my suggestion.
No, I think that's a fair point. I will just, sound a note of caution over there. That because it happened, let's say in the case of China, that India will go down the same path. We are also number 5, and so on and so forth. There are a couple of very fundamental differences that exist between China and India. So if you look at the demographics aside, the 3 big sources which consume a lot of the income and salaries in India are effectively housing, food, and medical care. In China, those tend to be subsidized, that being a communist country, and so the disposable incomes are much higher. So the domestic consumption that China sees, India will not see in the foreseeable future. So I don't think we should necessarily take a leaf out of China's book. I think the case that is being made here is that India should definitely strive and aspire to host the Olympics. What we are saying is that how do we fund it, and how do we manage it in a way which is sustainable, environmentally and other senses as well, brings in good governance and builds a very strong culture of fitness, health and sport in this country. So I think we should just rise a little above just the economic considerations and see that what will it do in terms of rebuilding India's national character. But the point that you made is something that is there ahead of us, something which can be aspirational for India, that look, the route that China took post hosting the Olympics, and could India follow the same one? Udit, thanks very much for joining the discussion. Appreciate that. Hope you can get away safely to wherever you're headed, and catch up later.
The irony of all the entire thing is that I have to come back to Ahmedabad tonight. But I was called in at the last minute, and I'm so sorry that I'm not there in person. But I would love to come and interact with the entire audience at RRSU very soon. I thank Bibal Bhai for ensuring that this BCORE event has become a massive success. And Ravneet, thank you so much for hosting me today. I am grateful for this opportunity, and I hope that we have much more conferences like this to really build that think tank towards the Olympic vision that our Honorable Prime Minister has taken on his shoulders to take India to the next step. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Udit. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for a lovely session, and I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Gill for wonderfully moderating this session. So I'd like to request Dr. Purnima Joshi, Director SPES, to please felicitate Mr. Gill. I'd like to request Dr. Purnima Joshi ma'am to please felicitate Mr. Gill for wonderfully moderating this session.
So for all those who do not know, Mr. Gill has been the CEO of Deutsche Bank and has immense experience in banking and financial sector. And he was the most appropriate person to moderate the session. And thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving forward, we had a slight change in the schedule. So now we'll be having the presentations for the OSRC members.